Hello, and welcome to episode 28 of the PI Filmmaker podcast. Now, I know I said last week I'd be getting a guest on, or I hinted towards guests coming up in the near future, and I had someone booked in for this week, but the day I put out last week's podcast, they actually got in touch and said, listen, can we delay until October because I've got a lot on at the minute. I said, that's absolutely fine. So hopefully I'll be able to do that episode in the near future. But that's okay because there's lots of other things filmmaking related and cinema related that we can discuss. Now, I'm not sure if anyone listening has seen this image of the four actors who are due to play or are currently playing the Beatles in this biopic series that's being filmed. But an image came out this week of the four actors. They've been captured doing the Abbey Road crossing, the image that was put on their famous album cover. And they're shooting a recreation of that moment, and a photographer, I don't know if it's behind the scenes and this is officially released or a paparazzi's caught it, but the four actors are stood waiting at the side, sticking their fingers up at the camera. And it's been getting a lot of stick online. People are saying this looks absolutely garbage. I saw one that said this was the moment I knew this film would be. I think they said ballsack. Now, I know you can't judge a movie based on still images, but this does look like four guys dressing up for Halloween or dressing up for a fancy dress party. The John Lennon beard looks horrific. It looks genuinely horrific. And it just got me thinking. I'm a huge Beatles fan. Like, people listening to this podcast or who know me will know that I love the Beatles. I absolutely adore them. They're such an inspiration to me. I'll get into why in a moment, but I'm not that excited. Not that excited. I'm not excited at all about these four films. I don't know what I'd be getting out of them that I haven't received from various books or documentaries that are out in the world. Like, who are these films for? So, like, I love the Beatles, and I think there's always this discussion on social media. Every couple of weeks or so, you see this viral comment that says the Beatles are overrated as fuck. It's like, well, if that's the case, why 60 years later are you posting on social media to get engagement by commenting on a band that broke up decades before you were even born? I don't know. But if we just park what they released for a moment, the content, whatever you think of that music, the amount of creativity is staggering. Like, as someone who likes to think of themselves as a creative, as someone who's trying to make art, tell stories, what these four guys, with the support of the producers and engineers in the studios, achieved in that period between 1962 and then, I know Abbey Road was the final recording, but they did a couple of other things in early 1970. What they achieved in that period, there's very few artists who come close in terms of the output. So if we think of something like the White Album being released in November 1968, around about that period, 1968. If you had a musician now, if we got to the January of the next year, having just released a record in, 2 months before, you'd expect them to be playing that music. But the Beatles were always pushing forward, so when it came to making that TV special, which became Let It Be and then ultimately Get Back, they didn't think, oh, let's play the White Album live. They thought, okay, let's make more music. They challenged themselves to make more music. I just can't imagine any artist doing that now. So the levels of creativity really do, like, it blows my mind. And I actually, my wallpaper on my phone is actually the image from the crossing at Abbey Road of the album cover, and I just have that there just like as a little, I don't know, maybe a little reminder to me to, like, that's what greatness is. Not that I'm a striving for greatness because no one comes close to them. But that idea around creativity and putting out your art into the world, and I look at these images and I think, like, what are we doing here? Like, who is this for? I mean, I'm sure they think they've been really clever in that each biopic, the four of them, will concentrate on a different Beatle. And they'll probably call it something like John, Paul, George and Ringo. Like, John's the first one. Like they do with all these films, like Michael, meaning the Michael Jackson film, or Amy, the Amy Winehouse documentary. I'm sure they'll come up with something that they think's really clever like that this is John, Paul, George and Ringo. But these films often end up becoming highlight reels, like the greatest hits of their lives, so to speak. Like, who's that? Who's I'm stumbling over my words here because I'm like, so why would you be excited about that? Because I'll come to Get Back later, but when you've got something like 7-8 hours of documentary material in which the real people are sat there going through the creative process, what could this film possibly give you, these four people impersonating the Beatles, that you haven't already got from that documentary series by Peter Jackson? I don't know. And then it's like the four guys playing them, and I'm not being a stickler for historical accuracy. I get it, like you're making now its own thing, but it won't be its own thing because it'll be heavily reliant on the audience recognizing the things that they're seeing. Because of the like 8 years, you're gonna truncate that into 4 feature films. So much is going to be left out, and you end up with a highlight reel of their careers, which fans can go, oh yeah, did you know that? Oh yeah, did you know that? Whereas I think it's more important to take a slice of a person's life if you're going to do this and make a film out of that. Maybe each biopic could, and maybe they are doing this, maybe each biopic could focus on 2 years of the life. So I don't know, we see the first 2 years are from Paul's perspective, the next 2 years are from George's perspective, the final 2 are from John Lennon's perspective. Maybe they're doing that. But I mean, personally, I don't have much faith in Sam Mendes. I think this is a filmmaker who's put out some good stuff, but also some stuff that I've just got no time for. Like 1917, I remember going and watching that in the cinema. I felt like I was watching a video game. We're just watching this character, this playable character, run around avoiding obstacles and explosions. It's like, oh, it's the horrors of war. It's like, well, no, go and watch a film like Come and See. Sorry, I've got it on my shelf here. I've got the Criterion version. Come and See, the war film. Go and watch something like that. That shows the horrors of war. So yeah, I'm not wild about Sam Mendes. I think there's a lot of gimmicks in his filmmaking, like the one shot, but it wasn't really one shot. I'm going on a bit of a rant here today. Apologies. I'm just gonna have a sip of coffee while I do this. So yeah, whilst all this was happening, obviously I'd then engaged. I'd prompted the algorithm, which I shouldn't have done. Because then Instagram thought I wanted to watch more content about Abbey Road, and I came across this video by a social media influencer. Sorry, I'm a bit blocked. And this social media influencer was suggesting that people go and walk the crossing or visit the Abbey Road crossing at sunrise. And I remember I sent it to Miranda. I went, this fucker stole my ending for X, because basically X builds towards 2 characters. They decide to go to London, and they eventually go to the Abbey Road crossing at sunrise before all the tourists have arrived, so that they can have a moment to themselves. And it just got me thinking, like, so you might spend 2 hours in a film building towards something that you think's a poignant moment, and now social media has turned that into a 30-second highlight reel. And it just got me thinking about social media more generally, that you can take essentially an idea or something that might be cathartic or poignant in a film, and you throw it out into the world in 30 seconds. What is this doing to our brains as viewers? because it's kind of training us to not appreciate the journey, just the payoff. How is this impacting audiences' ability to engage in feature film content? Because there's been articles on things like this by college professors where they've said film students won't even watch full films, or they're struggling to get through full films. And I've no doubt it's because social media's trained people to just see the payoff. So what does this do to our ability to engage in slower content or moments in film that actually take a moment to breathe and slow down? And I know Blurred Lines had its own reasons for the critics coming out, but I know some of them just thought it was slow. And it's like the kind of films that I get a lot out of tend to be slower. Now, I'm not talking super slow like filmmakers like Bellatar, but they have a moment to breathe and let you read an actor's face. And I know I spoke about this in regards to Christopher Nolan, that sometimes his films don't give the audience that room to breathe, and it's just constant momentum and cuts and shots and overwhelming the viewer, and it seems to work for him, like, fair play. But if that's not the thing that you like to do as a filmmaker, like, how do you find the people who are engaged in that? I don't know. Don't worry, I'm not repeating last week's content. But this, and I do apologise for my blocked nose. But this idea around biopics and music biopics in particular, they do have this tendency to just turn people's lives into highlight reels, and that's what this looks like to me, this Beatles biopic that's coming out. It's the reason I just don't have much time for him anymore. I didn't watch the Michael Jackson thing. That just looked like promotion for the artist. And with everything that's gone on around a person like Michael Jackson, for a film to just remove all controversy, like, what are we doing here? Like, just make a corporate video promoting him. Like, why do I need to sit and watch a 2.5 hour feature film? And I also skipped the Amy Winehouse one because it's like, I can't see that feature film in which someone's pretending to be Amy Winehouse with the accent. I can't see that being as emotionally resonant as the documentary Amy. I just can't, because when you're dealing with real people, there's nothing more powerful or emotionally engaging than actually seeing that person, for me at least. Which is why in recent years there's been very few biopics that I've been impressed by, like the Bob Marley one. I didn't think much to. Again, when you compare it to the Kevin MacDonald documentary Marley, like, there's just no comparison. The ones that I've quite liked have been things like Better Man, the Robbie Williams one, which I actually thought had a novel approach towards biopics. It turned him into a CGI monkey. The idea of the performing chimp, the performing ape. I thought that was interesting, and it moved me, and I found myself shedding a tear at the end of that film, because it just took a chunk of his life up to kind of the early 2000s, rather than going right up to the present. It stopped around the early 2000s, and it just led to this poignant moment with his dad. And I thought, okay, that's a story, because we start with him feeling like this rejected child, and we build towards him reconnecting or having a moment with his dad. Lovely stuff. But the one in recent years that has just really turned me off biopics, these musical ones in particular, Bohemian Rhapsody. Like, growing up, and when I was a kid, I was obsessed with Queen. I still like them now. I think they've got so many great songs, but as a kid in particular, I was obsessed with Queen. And I thought Freddie Mercury was just an absolute legend, still is. Like, if I will play their music still. I mean, I've now, I'm way more in the Beatles camp now than Queen. And I think, so for instance, if we look at something like the song Bohemian Rhapsody, everyone talks about how inventive that song was, and yeah, it's absolutely inventive. But if we actually take the end of Abbey Road, something like Golden Slumbers, Carry That Weight, and the end as one track, which I view as one track, that's got all the genre changes and peaks and troughs that something like Bohemian Rhapsody has, right? It starts with this slow piano track, it builds to this epic chorus on Carry That Weight, which is like the opera section of Bohemian Rhapsody. I'm not underselling what Freddie Mercury did with Bohemian Rhapsody and what Queen did with Bohemian Rhapsody. And then we've got this rock ending before going back towards something slow and more poignant again. But anyway, I'm going off track. That film, Bohemian Rhapsody, what a pile of absolute garbage. First of all, I think for the bandmates to actually be involved in this and turn Freddie's diagnosis into the reason why he put out such a triumphant performance at Live Aid was just absolutely insane. And I don't know how they stood by and watched that happen. So in the film, spoilers, Freddie gets diagnosed with HIV, and he then meets up with his bandmates just before the Live Aid performance, and it's like that's the reason why they were great at Live Aid. No, they were great at Live Aid because they were a great rock band. And it's that problem again that these biopics, they just turn someone's life into a highlight reel, and that's what it feels like. But beyond that, when people talk about the industry and people involved in being the industry as the purveyors of good taste and like these people know what they're talking about, Bohemian Rhapsody is evidence that a lot of people do not know what the fuck they're doing. This film won Oscars. Like, it won Rami Malek for his just silly impersonation of Freddie Mercury, won Best Actor. Maybe Most Actor, not Best Actor. But the one that's really strange, like, it won the Sound Mixing Award when the same year you've got something like A Quiet Place, which used sound. So that sound was so integral to the storytelling in that film, A Quiet Place. Like, Bohemian Rhapsody is just most sound. It's the same thing again, and it's almost like these people who in the industry who are involved in voting for these things, it's like if they can't see it or hear it, they don't understand it. So when something's doing a lot of something, oh yeah, that must be the best version of it, which is why Freddie, like, oh yeah, there's clearly acting going on there, or the sound design, like at Live Aid, oh, there's clearly sound design going on there, but is it being used creatively? Is there something is it integral to the storytelling, like in A Quiet Place? I don't think so. But the really odd one is that it won Best Editing, Best Film Editing, and I'm not the first person who's highlighted this Best Editing for that film being terrible. Like, there's a great video essay that I recommend everyone go and watch by Thomas Flight, in which he breaks down just one scene in which the band are meeting, is it the new manager or the record label guy at a pub. So they're sat outside at this pub in London and they meet this record label guy, and Thomas Flight just breaks down the cuts and how odd they are. It's like there's a cut every second, and he compares it to even something like Transformers. But it's like, why are there so many cuts in this film, in this scene that's just a dialogue scene? Like, what are we trying to achieve here? And possibly it was due to the coverage that the editor had. They couldn't do what they wanted to do with that scene. I know that the director was fired, Bryan Singer, and another director was brought in, and maybe this was just the footage they had that they had to deal with. But it's really odd, and especially when you look at some of the other films that were out that year that could have won Best Editing. So I've got the awards. Where are they? Bear with me. So for Best Editing, so the Best Sound Editing, Bohemian Rhapsody won, and it beat Black Panther, First Man, A Quiet Place, and Roma. Any of the other four films would have been far more deserving. Best Film Editing, it beat Black Klansman, The Favourite, Green Book, and Vice. Now, Black Klansman or The Favourite, give it one of those. And let's just check who did win Best Actor that year. So, Best Actor, Rami Malek beat Christian Bale as Dick Cheney, Bradley Cooper for A Star Is Born, Willem Dafoe for At Eternity's Gate, Vincent van Gogh, and Viggo Mortensen for Green Book. I mean, I'd give it to any of those over Rami Malek. I'd probably go a little bit outside the box and give it to Willem Dafoe, actually, for his performance as Van Gogh. But that's not going to happen. That film's just too arty and out there for the Academy. But when you see these awards being given out and you see people recognizing work that people then make video essays of, showing that it's objectively bad, it shows that a lot of people in the industry, they don't know what the fuck they're doing. And people might go, oh, Thomas Flight in that video essay, it's very nitpicky. It's not nitpicky. Like, editing is how we experience images and how we understand what it is that we're meant to be looking at and emotionally engaged with. Like issues with eye lines. And it used to kind of drive me mad sometimes working in universities when you'd be marking and there'd be issues with student films with eye lines, and other markers would be like, oh, I don't think it's that bad. It's like, it is bad. They don't look like they're looking at each other. That's a problem. Like, if the actors don't look like they're in the same geographical space, that is a problem. And also, they've been taught it, so if they can't demonstrate it, that's evidence that they don't understand what we're teaching. And there's all those issues in the Bohemian Rhapsody sequence around eye lines, a cut that you would then expect next, like it cuts from the record label guy looking at Roger Deakin and Brian Deakin. Was it Brian Deakin? John Deacon. Jesus, I said I was a Queen fan. It's been that long since I thought about Queen. John Deacon and Roger Taylor. Apologies. So the record label guy looks at John Deacon, Roger Taylor, but it cuts to Brian May, and it's things like that. It's like, that doesn't make sense. Like, if you're leading the audience into a moment, if one character's looking at another actor, you expect it to then cut to the actor they're looking at. But anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, so these biopics, they just don't work, and they just highlight the ridiculousness of the industry, that they will promote these kind of films that 6 months later you've completely forgotten about. Has anyone stuck their Blu-ray in of Bohemian Rhapsody in the last 10 years? Well, when did it come out? About 8 years ago. In the last 8 years? I don't think so. I mean, I don't own it on Blu-ray, but has anyone thought about watching that film? I doubt it, because it was just garbage. I mean, you do have biopics like Oppenheimer, which felt different. That did feel like a different type of biopic, in spite of my issues with Nolan's editing. I also liked the Apprentice, the Donald Trump film, in recent years, because obviously I'm not a fan of Trump, but it actually showed how rotten that character actually is, and where he picked up some of his rotten habits from. It was a very interesting film and well worth watching. And when you talk about a character that they can be despicable and you can still watch a film about them, the thing I don't like now in some online criticism is that if a character does something wrong, the film itself is horrible. It's like there was a lot of this discussion around Paul Thomas Anderson's Licorice Pizza. Like, oh, that film is disgusting because it shows characters doing things that are questionable. It's like, no, people embody the whole spectrum. Like, there's areas of grey in everyone in which people do things like, oh, that was a bit questionable. Now, I'm not saying anyone's done anything as questionable as Donald Trump. I'm not suggesting that, but I'm saying films are more interesting when you show the grey. And with this Beatles biopic, because the families are involved, I don't think you're going to get those levels of grey that exist in everyone. You'll end up having a very sanitised version of a familiar story. And when you contrast that with something like Get Back, which I just absolutely adored, that documentary series by Peter Jackson. Some people said it was too long, but as a Beatles fan, just to sit in the space with those four excellent artists and watching them go through the process of creating something, it was just so wonderful to me, and it got us something that I think people kind of want to gloss over when it comes to creativity now. Like, you see all these influencers saying, do this every morning, write a page, selling you the dream. But actually, creativity is a graft, and that film wasn't afraid to show that actually sometimes it's just sitting in a room and dealing with the blank page. That idea that, okay, we haven't really got anything, what are we going to do? And the conflicts that come along with creativity, like someone turns up late, not lashing out at them, or someone feels like they're being told what to do, like as is the case with Paul and George, and we see that little bit of conflict. And initially this film, when it was released as Let It Be, way back when, was shown as the evidence that the Beatles had just completely fallen apart and that they were at each other's throats. And even McCartney had bought into this myth that it was like not a good experience making that album. But Peter Jackson, when he looked at the rushes for that film, he was surprised. He was like, they look like they're getting on, and when you watch the film, they clearly do get on, which led me to think, well, okay, if this was meant to be them at their worst when they weren't getting along, what really broke them up? And we can only guess that it was the business dealings that were going on outside of the creativity, which is such a sad thing that it was in the end money that tore them apart. But the actual process of sitting with that band and watching as McCartney tries to bring something like the track Get Back into life, like he just starts strumming and the camera just holds on him. And I think George is yawning, Ringo's sat there, John hasn't shown up yet. And you just watch him trying to figure this thing out. And obviously we know the track, so you're like, oh, he's getting towards it, he's getting there. That is the creative act, and it's the thing that like film schools and other schools, I don't think they really want to show that actually it's difficult and it's stressful making anything, and it requires a level of commitment that a lot of people I don't think want to give to anything. So when people say the Beatles are overrated, it's like, well, I'm sure they are to you who just sits on your phone tweeting these things out and has probably never engaged in doing anything creative. I'm sure to you they are overrated. But if you like pit the Beatles against any of your favourite artists right now, the output and the standard of the output, it surpasses any contemporary artist as far as I'm concerned. Like people say, oh, something like, oh, the White Album's too long. It's like, show me any artist now that could come out with that level, that creative outburst like that, in which there's just such an array of songs. You've got heavy stuff like Helter Skelter, you've got really poignant stuff like Blackbird or Mother Nature's Son, you've got John like singing things like Your Blues. It's just incredible stuff, and it always just blows my mind. And when people are just dismissive of them because they were so popular or because they have had such success, like just say, oh, they're overrated, it's like, that is just the most pointless comment of all time as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, when you see in something like Get Back, and I thought it was wonderful that Peter Jackson, the filmmaker, had the confidence to say, no, we are going to hold on these people as they go through this process of trying to create something. The repetition, the boredom, the failed ideas, the even at times the little disagreements, seeing a song take shape. It must have been like him, it must have been very meta in that regard, because he's at the editing suite with his editor. They're trying to formulate the idea about this scene in which the band are trying to formulate an idea, which is why when they get to the rooftop gig, it feels so triumphant in the film, because you've watched this band for 6 hours, and then in the 7th hour, somehow in less than a month, they've come up with all these new songs, which for any other band would be some of their, I mean, they still are some of their great songs, but things like Don't Let Me Down, which, oh my god, what a song. Get Back, Across the Universe. What else did they sing? Obviously Let It Be, The Long and Winding Road. To any other band, these are just their top tracks, but in the discography of the Beatles, they're just one of many great tracks. And when you compare something like Get Back to the social media influencer who's saying, go to Abbey Road at sunrise, it's great, no one's there, it shows the difference between like what social media's maybe done to us, in that the journey has become irrelevant. It's just the output. And I think part of the joy of something like Get Back is that we do see the journey. And to me, as someone who's interested in feature filmmaking, the journey does still matter. It really does. And when I think about, there was also recently, there was 2 Paul McCartney documentaries. There was the Man on the Run one, which was about the period just after breaking up from the Beatles and how he dealt with that. But also there was this one about his bass that went missing in the early 70s, and it was recently reunited with him, and in that documentary, there was a. It sounds really boring, and spoilers. He gets the base back, but it sounds quite boring, a documentary about this lost base. But actually, it was really poignant because at the centre of it, there was someone who knew what had happened to the base, and because they wanted to protect their dad's sort of character, the character of their own father, they kept it a secret for years. And that idea of telling a little lie or withholding something that would bring someone else happiness because it might reveal something about your own dad that might not be favourable or people might look badly on, was really quite poignant. And that's probably what's missing with these biopics, is that there isn't that level of grey or those human emotions that we can look at and go, yeah, probably in the same circumstances. I don't know if it was my mum and she'd stolen McCartney's bass. I don't know how that would ever happen, but my mum stole Paul McCartney's bass and then I knew about it. Would I say something, or would I be worried that the millions of Beatles fans would then think my mum's nothing more than a thief? I get that. I get that as an emotion. And these biopics, when you're just showing four guys who are just dressing up as the Beatles walking across the Abbey Road crossing, but what does it mean beyond the recognisable imagery and iconography? What do I understand about the human condition? And I think that's what's often missing in these biopics, which is why something like, I think of the last 20 years, like immediately if someone says biopic that you enjoy, I think of something like Martin Scorsese's Aviator, which I thought was criminally overlooked at the time. DiCaprio, pardon me, I thought his performance was excellent. The film itself, it took like this 20-year period. It didn't go into the whole period of him living in the hotel and being a recluse, but it took this period where he was first working in movies, but then trying to develop this Spruce Goose, this plane that was designed for the war. But in terms of presenting a person and understanding the flaws, the flaws were there, and we understood that this person could be vindictive in areas, like when he argues with the Cate Blanchett character, Katharine Hepburn, but also him navigating childhood trauma and problems that had been put in his head as a child, especially in regards to being a germaphobe. Like, he struggled with washing his hands relentlessly. And when the final scene, I remember sitting in the cinema like 20 years ago. There's this great final moment, and this is like sometimes maybe why these biopics, why they spell everything out, because DiCaprio looks in the mirror, and over his shoulder there's like a flashback to his childhood in which his mum was having him spell out certain diseases and germs, and she's washing him, and he's dealing with this tick at the moment where he keeps saying the way of the future, the way of the future, the way of the future, and he can't stop saying it. It's like his OCD has taken over and he can't stop saying it. But eventually, I guess this would be an amazing acting task actually, where people talk about changing the meaning of words. He's saying the way of the future, the way of the future, the way of the future, and he can't stop saying it. And he sees himself as a child, and eventually he starts saying the way of the future, the way of the future, the way of the future. And the meaning has now become, I'm not escaping this. My life is always going to be dominated by this problem, this fear of germs, this obsessive compulsive disorder. And it cuts to black. And I was like, oh my God, what a powerful ending. Like, what a sad ending, because this character can't escape their own problems. But like, what an ending. I remember someone said in the cinema, what the fuck did that mean? And I thought, well, there's no helping some audience members. And I can remember it vividly that this person said that out loud. So maybe that's why these biopics, a lot of them do just spell out every element of the story and just show the iconography, because they're trying to appeal to these mass audiences and a broad demographic. But to me, it's just uninteresting filmmaking a lot of the time, unless you get someone like a Scorsese behind the wheel. So, if there's been some ideas this week, if any, I think it's just around the payoff versus the experience itself. Like, a lot of the time now, it seems like we're just hurtling towards the payoff. Like, oh, there's the Abbey Road crossing shot. Got it. They've done that. And this is what the Michael Jackson biopic looked like to me, that it's just the highlight reel. There's the thriller thing. Or I'm sure it will be with the Beatles. We'll have recreations of A Hard Day's Night, or the Rubber Soul album cover. I'm sure they'll do that at some point. Or obviously they've got to do the Abbey Road thing. But then if that's all you're doing, why not just watch a documentary? And if I'd recommend this week, if there is a recommendation and you've not seen the Get Back documentary or the McCartney based documentary, go and watch those. And if you're a filmmaker, it gives you a lot to think on in terms of showing the journey of a character, because it seems like audiences increasingly don't want the journey, they just want the payoff. So that's it for this week. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week. Bye bye.